Well, hi, my name is Andy Tidy and welcome back to another episode of Canal Hunter. We are really on the final stretch of this Series 6. We've been working our way along the Dudley canals looking for the lost sections, and we've now reached the far end of the Dudley No2 Canal, which is better known as the Lapal Canal. Well, to start off this episode, I've come to the quiet environment of Leasowes Park, but to tell this tale we need to jump back a little bit, and I'm going back as far as the Coombswood Trust, otherwise known as Hawne Basin. This was once an old transshipment basin used by Stewart and Lloyd's Tube Works, but since 1977 it's been the home to a growing community of residential and recreational boats. And depending on the date of the map that you're looking at, the basin goes under a number of different names: Coombswood Basin, Haywood Basin, Leasowes Basin, or as today, Hawne Basin. Now, one of the nice things about making these videos is it draws out a lot of additional historical insights, either as comments on my YouTube channel or more often within the associated Facebook groups. And I am always indebted to the local historians whose material I rely on so much. And in this episode, a special shout out has to go to Roy Ken, whose material on the Coombswood Trust website was particularly useful. The area around Hawne Basin was dominated by mighty brickworks, forges and engineering works. And just beyond the basin there was a big iron bridge which accessed the Haywood Forge. That was demolished when the end of the canal was stanked off, which is effectively when it's shuttered off with waterproof piling. And therefore that really marks the start of the canal hunt proper. Now, over the last few weeks, several of you have commented on the increasing use of my drone to support these videos. Now, one of the great things about this new drone technology is it gives us the ability to look in places which we could never otherwise reach. And this is very much the case of the 400 yards between the stanked off section beyond Hawne Basin and the Haywood Bridge on Mocklow Hill. This is a section which was filled in 1955 and is completely inaccessible behind locked factories. So we've now moved into the start of the lost section of the Dudley No2 Canal. This marks the start of a cosmetically restored canal bed, and it represents the western boundary of the Leasowes, a park which was once one of the nation's premier managed gardens when it was built in the mid-1700s. The site was built as something of an ornamental farm, famed for its simplicity of design, and it was often compared to the likes of Chatsworth and Woburn for its significance. But after a succession of owners who went bankrupt, it fell into disrepair in 1820 before finally it was bought by Leasowes and Council in 1934. And then part of it was leased off to the Leasowes Golf Club, and the rest made into the public park that you see today. Well, Dudley Council eventually undertook a fairly extensive renovation of the area in 2008 and 2009, and that included clearing out the old Dudley No2 Canal bed as it crossed across the valley above Breach's Pool. This is a really impressive embankment, standing 60 feet above Breach's Pool, and I'm told represents the highest embankment in the country, surpassing even those on the mighty Shropshire Union. Well, given the attractive nature of the area on the edge of a popular public path, I guess it's no great surprise to find photos of leisure boating. And without wishing to spoil the story, the tunnel up ahead collapsed and the whole section closed to through traffic in 1917. So between then and about 1965, you could hire a boat and row your way right the way up the section we're looking at today. I can see why rowing its line became very popular, at least until Manor Way was constructed and the line of the canal was blocked off. Coming out of the park, the course of the canal descends into just becoming a public footpath, reaching the site of the old four-drove bridge, and then onto the site of the Manor Lane Bridge, which now carries the busy Manor Way dual carriageway in and out of the region. These days, although it certainly looks like a canal and it has its original sides in place, just the merest remnant of water sits in the bottom. In fact, mostly it's a bit of a reedy mess, but there is enough water for a few ducks at the far end. Immediately beyond the park, the line of the canal remains completely filled in, but it's still accessible as a public footpath, and that's the way that we're going to go. Beyond Manor Way, the line of the canal lies directly behind the Black Horse pub. Itself once the Lapal Nail and Chain Works, and had a basin leading to a colliery which existed just at the base of today's electricity pylon. The old canal used to follow the field boundary behind me, as far as the end of the old medieval fish ponds that I'm walking through. These were built to serve St Mary's Abbey, and the remains of the abbey still stands in a farmyard overlooking this increasingly rural section of canal bed. We really have broken out of the city. And at the head of the fish ponds where the trees start, a lone tree stands out in a field to the north. This marks the spot of the old pumping house, but more of that in the next episode. The long thin field beyond the hedge represents the ground which was owned by the canal company, and within it there was a very deep cutting leading up to the western portal of the Lapal Tunnel. The portal itself stood beneath the line of trees which marks the very end of this meadow, and the area which was filled in 1965. In fact, this whole area at the end of the tunnel supported something of a community, because not only did you have the pump house, you also had a collection of houses, a store and pub which clustered around the tunnel mouth. You can see them in all the old photos. However, I have to give you a word of warning. The line of the Dudley No2 Canal through here isn't a public right-of-way, but there is kind of a proxy right-of-way along Monarch's Way, a public footpath which leads through the grounds of the old abbey and pretty much up to the tunnel mouth. So I would suggest, in the absence of your little friendly eye in the sky, I'd follow the Monarch's Way and just simply observe the line of the canal from the side. To be honest, there's nothing to be seen, it's actually been completely filled in. Now I think I've got as close as I can possibly get to the western portal of the Lapal Tunnel. The old boundaries for the canal company land stopped at the hedge right behind me, and the line of the canal is still marked out as a long, thin, tapering meadow. In fact, the tree which stands just over here looks to be the same tree that you can see in the pictures of the old tunnel when it was still exposed. I suspect that the tunnel entrance still stands underneath me, about 50 feet just down there. Now this canal tunnel was built on a real budget, and it was built to incredibly tight dimensions. It's very like the Gosty Hill Tunnel, its little sister a few miles back to the north. And that meant travelling through with cargoes was a very slow business. But I'll tell you more about that in next episode. For now, I'm going to bring this episode of Canal Hunter to a close. We've travelled from Hawne Basin through Leasowes Park and out here into the countryside and to the western portal of the Lapal Tunnel. Next time we'll look at the tunnel itself, but till then, cheerio.